Hello my beloved friends, and welcome back to the Untold Stories. Now I know a lot of you use these videos to sleep, so before you drift off I thought it would be a crazy idea if everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the case. Right, let's get comfy and relax and let's begin with story number 1. You think you know what fear is? What madness looks like? I did too. When I started my internship at Blackwood Asylum, I was ready for anything. Or so I thought. But what happens when the very walls of the institution begin to breathe? When the darkness isn't just a lack of light, but a living, hungry entity? Tonight, I'm about to find out. And trust me, you won't believe what happened on Olivia's nightmare shift. Title: Olivia's Nightmare Shift. The siren's wail at Blackwood Asylum wasn't an alarm. Not after midnight. It was a lullaby. A chilling, distorted hum that vibrated through the thick, lead-lined walls of the maximum security wing. I felt it deep in my bones, a tremor that had nothing to do with the vibrations of this ancient place. Tonight, the lullaby felt different. Sharper. James, the night nurse whose eyes had seen far too much in these halls, stood beside me. He didn't even flinch. I clutched my clipboard like a shield, my face pale under the flickering fluorescent lights. My naive ambition for this psych intern role felt like a lifetime ago. What was that? I whispered, my voice barely a breath. James's gaze was fixed on cell block C, that notorious corridor where patients like Elias Thorne, a man who saw human skin as canvas, resided. Just Elias, he mumbled, a dry chuckle escaping his lips. Probably finished another masterpiece. The joke was weak, even to him. A sudden, jarring thump echoed from down the hall. Not a normal sound. This was heavy. Deliberate. My breath hitched. Is that a door? Before James could dismiss it, the emergency lights flickered, bathing the already grim hallway in an even more sickly yellow. Then, a guttural scream ripped through the silence. It wasn't from a patient. It was from somewhere closer. A staff scream. Stay here, James ordered, the words tight in his throat, even as his instincts screamed at me to run. He gripped the heavy, ancient flashlight on his belt, its beam weak against the encroaching shadows. He moved, not cautiously, but with a horrifying certainty, towards the scream. Every step was a drumbeat on my own coffin. I knew he was gone before I heard the second scream. James's scream. It was short, choked, and utterly final. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Whatever was loose, it wasn't just out. It was hunting. I fled. Not towards the main exit, that would be predictable. Whatever it would be there, waiting. I darted into the labyrinthine service tunnels beneath the asylum, a dusty, forgotten network of pipes and shadows. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and something else, something rotten and sweet. Every shadow seemed to writhe, every distant creak an approaching footstep. My mind raced, desperate for a plan. The creatures spoke of their madness. The patients. What if it wasn't just a physical entity? What if it fed on the very despair and derangement that permeated Blackwood? Suddenly, a rhythmic thump-thump-thump echoed from further down the tunnel. Not a footstep. More like a heartbeat. A monstrous, distorted heartbeat. It pulsed, growing louder, closer. My breath hitched. I pressed myself against the cold, damp wall, praying the darkness would swallow me whole. The heartbeat stopped, directly in front of my hiding spot. The oppressive silence that followed was worse than any noise. Then, a child's sing-song voice, chillingly sweet, broke the quiet. "Found you, little bird." I froze. A girl's voice. A child's. But laced with a depth of ancient malice that turned my blood to ice. Slowly, agonizingly, I peered around the rusted pipe. Standing there, in the faint glow filtering from a grate above, was a young girl. Maybe 10 years old. Long, dark hair matted with grime, eyes wide and unblinking, black as obsidian. She wore a tattered, blood-stained white dress, far too old for her. This wasn't one of the asylum's patients. This was impossible. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The girl tilted her head, a bone-cracking sound accompanying the movement. "They call me Sophia," she chirped, a smile splitting her face, revealing teeth far too long, far too sharp for a child. "I used to play here. Before they put the bad men in my house." Her house. The asylum had been built on the grounds of an old orphanage, rumors whispered, and some even claimed it was haunted by the children who died there. But this wasn't a ghost story. This was flesh and blood, or something that wore it. "You're not real," I said, my mind struggling to reject the impossibility. Sophia giggled. "Oh, but I am. And I'm so hungry. The grown-up voices are so noisy." She pointed a small, skeletal finger towards a thick, ancient pipe. "But the whispers, they taste the best." I glanced at the pipe. It hummed faintly, a low vibration, and suddenly, I understood. The whispers she mentioned. She wasn't just a ghost. She was the collective madness, the suppressed horrors, the very essence of the asylum's dark history, given grotesque form. And she was feeding. "You took Noah," I gasped. "You took James." Sophia's head snapped back. "They were unrefined. Too much noise. But you," her obsidian eyes fixed on me, "you're so full of beautiful, terrified silence. And curiosity. It's delicious." The girl suddenly blurred, a flickering image, then solidified directly in front of me, so close I could feel the chilling cold radiating from her. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The fear was a physical chokehold. Sophia reached out a tiny, razor-tipped hand, her touch impossibly cold, and brushed my cheek. "Don't worry," she whispered, her voice now a chilling blend of child and ancient evil. "It won't hurt for long. Just a little taste." I closed my eyes, bracing for the end. But the touch lingered. The girl's focus wasn't on my throat, not yet. It was on my forehead. "Your thoughts," Sophia hissed, "they're like a tangled knot. So much doubt. So much knowledge you try to push away." Suddenly, a searing pain exploded behind my eyes. Not a physical wound, but something far worse. An invasion. Images, fragmented and grotesque, flooded my mind. Elias Thorne, meticulously flaying a doll, another patient, Matthew, endlessly whispering to an invisible, decaying friend, the shadowed corners of cells where unspeakable acts had been performed. It was the raw, undiluted madness of Blackwood pouring into me, not just as sensory input, but as experience. I felt the patient's terror, their rage, their bottomless despair. Their insanity was becoming my own. Sophia smiled, a genuine, delighted smile this time. Yes. Good. Let it in. Let the whispers become your own. My body began to convulse, a desperate, losing battle against the onslaught. I felt my grip on reality fraying, my own sanity fracturing under the immense pressure of 100 fractured minds. The girl was feeding on more than just life, she was devouring consciousness itself, absorbing the very essence of reason. Just as the darkness threatened to consume me entirely, a faint, almost imperceptible sound pierced through the cacophony of invading thoughts. A distant, rhythmic metallic clang. Clang, clang, clang. Sophia's smile faltered. Her obsidian eyes, for the first time, showed a flicker of something resembling irritation, perhaps even fear. No, she hissed, her child's voice losing its sweetness, replaced by a guttural snarl. Not him. Not yet. The clang grew louder, closer, echoing through the pipes, a steady, relentless beat. It wasn't human. It was something else. Something mechanical. Something that had always been part of Blackwood, unseen, unheard, deep within its foundations. Sophia, losing her predatory focus on me, whirled around, her attention now fully on the approaching sound. The raw malice in her eyes intensified. You don't understand, she snarled, addressing the unseen entity. This is mine. The clang stopped directly outside our section of the tunnel. Then, a grinding, metallic groan, as if ancient gears were turning for the first time in decades. A section of the pipe wall, impossibly, began to retract, revealing not a passage, but a dark, cavernous space beyond. From the darkness, a form began to emerge. Not a creature of flesh and blood, nor of spectral whispers. This was something else entirely. A towering, skeletal automaton, crafted from rusted iron and salvaged asylum parts. Its head was a battered old intercom speaker, from which the clang had emanated. Its limbs were made of twisted bed frames and surgical tools. In one claw-like hand, it held a massive, bloodied wrench. And its eyes, two dim, red lights, fixed on Sophia. Protocol initiated, containment breach. Entity, unlicensed manifestation, a distorted, synthesized voice boomed from its intercom head, its voice a metallic roar that vibrated through my very bones. Threat level, unacceptable. Sophia shrieked, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury and terror. The child persona shattered, revealing the ancient, monstrous entity beneath. You miserable tin can! You dare interfere? I am the voice of this place. I am its hunger. The automaton, unmoved, simply advanced. Its movements were slow, ponderous, but unstoppable. Each metallic clang of its foot on the ground was a death knell. It didn't rush. It didn't need to. It was the asylum's ultimate, unfeeling, self-correcting mechanism. Threat neutralization, Priority 1, the automaton droned. Sophia, for all her ancient power, was trapped. The automaton was not alive to be terrorized, not mad to be fed upon. It was simply a function. A cold, unfeeling counterforce to the very chaos she embodied. My mind, though still reeling from the mental assault, watched in horrified fascination as the automaton slowly, inexorably, cornered Sophia against the tunnel wall. The air crackled with their conflicting energies, the raw, chaotic madness of Sophia against the cold, implacable order of the machine. With a final, desperate scream of rage, Sophia lunged, her skeletal hand morphing into a claw of pure shadow. The automaton met her with a heavy, deliberate swing of its wrench. The impact was sickening. A grotesque splatter of shadows and what looked like fragmented memories, followed by a high-pitched, dying shriek that echoed with the agony of 1,000 lost souls. Silence. The automaton stood still, its red eyes glowing dimly, its intercom head emitting a soft, static hum. The air, though still heavy, no longer carried the metallic tang of something foul. The oppressive, hungry presence was gone. Gasping for breath, I found myself slumped against the wall, utterly drained. The phantom echoes of madness still reverberated in my skull, a chilling reminder of what had almost consumed me. I looked at the automaton, now just a silent, hulking mass of metal in the flickering light. Was it a protector? Or just another jailer, infinitely more terrifying than the patients it guarded? The red lights in its head blinked twice, then went dark. The hum ceased. It was just an inert machine once more, swallowed by the shadows it emerged from. The section of the pipe wall slowly, gratingly, slid back into place, sealing off the cavern beyond. I was alone. In the dark. In the heart of Blackwood Asylum. The night was far from over. And the whispers, though silent for now, lingered. A chilling realization struck me. What if the automaton only reset the curiosity? What if it merely contained the manifestation, but the source of the madness, the true whispers that Sophia had fed on, were still there, dormant, waiting for another host? I had faced the unspeakable. I had survived. But the cost was high. Blackwood had shown me its true face. And as I finally pushed myself to my feet, my legs trembling, I knew one thing with horrifying certainty: I would never look at a safe place the same way again. The monsters weren't just in the cells. They were in the very fabric of the building, waiting for the perfect moment to emerge, to feed, and to remind you that some horrors simply can't be locked away. Now our next journey takes us to Marrakesh, to a place known as Dar al-Jumaun. But despite its peaceful name, this is no sanctuary. Here, the whispers aren't just a byproduct of madness, they're an ancient entity, feeding on the broken minds of its patients. And tonight, a man named Amin is about to discover that some ancient evils are best left undisturbed. Let's pass to story number 2. The Weaver's Return. The call came just after midnight. My phone, a relic of better days, buzzed on the dusty counter of the patisserie I ran in the old Medina of Marrakesh. Not for a last-minute bread order, not tonight. It was from the clinic. Dar al-Jumaun, they called it, the House of Silence. But what echoed within its walls was anything but. Amin, the voice on the other end, Dr. Khalid, sounded strained. We have a situation. Patient M7 is exhibiting unusual distress. The night staff, they're not responding. My stomach clenched. M7. Malik. The name alone was a cold knot in my gut. Malik wasn't like the others at Dar al-Jumaun, the mentally fractured souls seeking solace. Malik was different. Her eyes held an ancient, hungry intelligence, a depth that swallowed light. She spoke in riddles, ancient proverbs no one recognized, and sometimes her voice would shift. I'm on my way, I said, the words tasting like ash. Dar al-Jumaun wasn't a well-known place. It was tucked away, an old, sprawling riad converted into a private clinic, hidden amongst the quiet residential alleys, far from the bustling Jima LFNA. Nobody would ever imagine the true horror festering behind its unassuming walls. underscore 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 underscore. The air grew heavy the closer I got. The usual scent of jasmine and spices in the winding alleys was replaced by something else, something metallic and cloying, like old blood and ozone. The clinic's heavy wooden door, usually locked with a formidable bolt, stood ajar. A weak, flickering light bled from within. "Hello?" I called out, pushing the door open just enough to slip inside. My voice died in my throat. The main courtyard, usually a serene oasis with a trickling fountain, was a scene of unsettling disarray. Clay pots overturned, scattered medical files, a gurney flipped on its side. And then I saw it. A single, dark handprint smeared on the pristine white wall. It wasn't blood. It was too dark, too viscous. A low, guttural moan echoed from the corridor leading to the patient wings. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic dum-dum-dum. This wasn't just unusual distress. This was a massacre waiting to happen. I pulled out my phone, its flashlight beam cutting through the gloom like a weak prayer. "Dr. Khalid?" I whispered into the phone, but there was only static. The signal was dead. Of course. I moved forward, each step deliberate, the clatter of my own shoes deafening in the silence. The corridor was narrow, adorned with traditional Moroccan tiles, their intricate patterns seeming to writhe in the shadows. I passed the observation rooms, their small, barred windows like eyes staring into a deeper darkness. Then, a flicker of movement in the reflection of a polished brass lantern. I spun around. Nothing. Just the shadows playing tricks. My breath hitched. This place, always quiet, now felt like it was breathing around me. Watching. I rounded the corner into the patient wing. The stench was overwhelming now, a mix of the metallic tang and something else, something ancient and sweet, like decayed dates. The doors to the rooms were mostly closed, but one, belonging to patient M7, Malik, was wide open. And from within, a rhythmic, wet scraping sound. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to approach. My hand shook as I reached for the doorframe, my knuckles white. I peered inside. The room was bathed in a sickly green glow, emanating from Malik herself. She sat cross-legged on the floor, seemingly calm, her back to me. Her long, dark hair, usually neatly braided, now snaked around her, almost like independent tendrils. And the scraping sound. It was her fingernails. Long, unnaturally long and sharp, dragging across the tiled floor, carving deep grooves into the hardened clay. But it wasn't just the sound. What truly chilled me was what she was carving. Not random scratches. It was a symbol. An ancient, intricate design, one I'd seen before in forbidden texts I'd stumbled upon as a curious young man researching Moroccan folklore. A symbol of binding and unbinding. Malik? My voice was a tremor. She slowly turned her head. Her eyes, usually dark and unsettling, were now glowing with that same eerie green light. And her lips, they weren't moving, but a voice, a chorus of voices, ancient and resonant, filled the room. "He walks among us, Amin. The one they tried to bury. The one they thought silenced. My blood ran cold. He? Who was she talking about? And how did she know my name? I hadn't been introduced to her. What are you doing? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Malik didn't answer directly. Her focus returned to the symbol, her nails scraping with renewed intensity. The green light intensified, pulsating with each stroke. The air in the room grew colder, thick with a palpable dread. Then, I saw him. In the far corner of the room, previously obscured by shadows, a figure began to coalesce. Not a patient. This was something else. A tall, gaunt man, dressed in tattered, ancient robes, his face a mask of dried, cracked earth. His eyes were milky white, but they seemed to fix on me with an unnatural intensity. He was barely substantial, flickering at the edges, like a forgotten memory trying to take form. He was trapped, Malik's coarse voice whispered, her head still bowed. Trapped in the silence. But the silence, it feeds the hunger. The apparition raised a skeletal hand. And from his open palm, a swirling vortex of dust and shadows began to form. It pulsed, pulling at the air, at the very light in the room. I felt a pressure building in my chest, a terrifying sense of being watched, not just by the entity, but by something far, far older. This is not a clinic, Malik's voice resonated through me, not just around me. This is a tomb. And the mad, they are the keys. The entity in the corner solidified further, its features becoming clearer. And I recognized it. Not from ancient texts, but from the chilling, whispered tales from my grandmother. The Weaver of Whispers, she called him. A jinn, an ancient spirit said to feed on secrets and the unraveling of the mind, found long ago beneath a hidden place. The clinic was built over it. A sudden, sharp scream tore through the night from the other wing. Not Malik's. Not the entities. It was the desperate cry of a patient. A man I knew, Elijah, gentle soul, terrified of shadows. Malik stopped carving. Her head snapped up, her green eyes blazing. The threads break, she hissed, her voice now solely her own, but layered with a horrifying, primal hunger. They cannot contain him now. The spectral figure in the corner began to glow, a sickly white light, pulsating in sync with the screams. The vortex in his hand expanded, sucking in the air, pulling at my very soul. I knew then. Malik wasn't a patient. She was a catalyst. She was breaking the ancient bindings that held the Weaver of Whispers in check. And she was doing it willingly. My eyes darted around the room, desperate. There had to be something. Anything. My gaze fell on a small, ornate, brass censer hanging by the door, usually used for burning incense. It was mundane, out of place, but it held a specific, heavy weight. And as my eyes focused on it, the Weaver of Whispers' milky eyes flickered, just for a split second, a reaction. It was a desperate gamble. A prayer. The censer was an ancient tool for purification, for warding off malevolent spirits in traditional Moroccan homes. Could it work against something so powerful? Stop! I yelled, my voice cracking, but with a surprising surge of desperate courage. I ripped the censer from the wall, its chain rattling like a warning. Malik shrieked, a sound of pure fury. The Weaver of Whispers solidified further, its shadowy arm reaching out, its intention clear, to silence me. But I was faster. Or perhaps the sudden, desperate defiance momentarily caught them off guard. I swung the sensor, not at Malik, but directly at the swirling vortex in the Weaver's hand. A blinding flash erupted, a scream of pure agony from the entity, and a violent recoil that threw me back against the wall. The green light around Malik winked out, plunging the room into near darkness. The Weaver of Whispers dissolved, not into dust, but into a chilling, fragmented wail that seemed to disperse into the very fabric of the clinic. Malik lay slumped on the floor, her eyes closed, her hair no longer moving. She was just Malik again. A sick girl. The carvings on the floor, however, remained, glowing faintly, a terrifying testament to what had almost been unleashed. I scrambled to my feet, my body shaking, my mind reeling. The metallic smell was gone. The chilling presence had vanished. But the silence that replaced it was heavy, suffocating. The screams from the other wing had stopped. I found Dr. Khalid and the other night staff later, scattered throughout the clinic. Not dead. Worse. They sat frozen, their eyes wide, staring blankly, their minds irrevocably shattered. Like their thoughts, their very souls had been gently scooped out. They were empty husks. I called for help, for the authorities. But what would I tell them? That an ancient evil was awakening in a private clinic in Marrakesh, summoned by a patient who channeled something unspeakable? They'd put me in a padded room. As the morning sun finally filtered through the high windows, painting the courtyard in warm, deceptive light, I looked at the clinic at Dar al-Jumaun. It was no longer just a house of silence. It was a cage. A very fragile cage, holding back something that now knew it had been awakened, and it knew my name. And Malik, when she finally stirred, her eyes wide and innocent, looked at me with an unnerving curiosity. "Amin," she said, her voice soft, childlike. "Did you feel it? The whispers?" I felt it. Deep down. And I knew, with a bone-chilling certainty, that the binding was only temporary. The Weaver of Whispers was still there, beneath the unsuspecting streets of Marrakesh, waiting. Waiting for the silence to return. Waiting for another broken mind to open the way. And I, Amin, would forever be listening for its low, distant hum. For the next time the lullaby began. And finally, from the sun-baked alleys of Marrakesh, we travel thousands of miles to a desolate stretch of highway in the vast expanse of Texas. Because fear, it turns out, knows no geographical bounds. Welcome to story number 3. The neon sign for the Desert Rose Motel flickered erratically, casting a sickly pink glow over the dead-end stretch of Highway 281, somewhere deep in the desolate heart of Texas. Most folks blew right past it, chasing the lights of San Antonio or the dusty promise of the Mexican border. But for me, Matthew, it was home for the night, behind the scarred plywood desk, clocking in for another graveyard shift. My shift started like any other, the hum of the ancient ice machine, the faint smell of stale cigarettes, and the oppressive quiet of the Texas night. The kind of quiet that lets your own thoughts get too loud. I was swiping through old horror movie trailers on my phone, trying to make the hours crawl by faster when the bell above the office door jingled. It was an old woman, frail as spun sugar, shrouded in a heavy shawl despite the stifling heat. Her eyes, though clouded with age, held a sharp, unnerving glint. She moved with a strange, gliding stillness, her feet barely seeming to lift from the ground. "Room 7, she rasped, her voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Is it available?" I pulled up the dusty ledger. "Room 7. Yeah, it's open. Never gets booked much. Kinda tucked away at the back." I gave her the key, the brass heavy and cold in my palm. "Just head around the corner there, first door on the left." She took the key, her fingers brushing mine. They were impossibly cold, like bone. "It knows when it's being watched," she whispered, her eyes fixing on mine. "And it doesn't like to be alone." My blood ran cold. "Ma'am?" She just smiled, a thin, ancient smile that didn't reach her eyes, and glided out into the night. My gaze instinctively drifted to the surveillance monitor. The cameras were old, grainy, mostly useless, but I saw her reflection, a shadowy blur, disappear around the corner towards room 7. Underscore 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 underscore. An hour later, the monotony returned, but the old woman's words had planted a seed of unease. "It knows when it's being watched." I found myself staring at the monitor, specifically the feed from the camera covering the back corner where room 7 was. Nothing. Just the dull gleam of the empty parking lot, the wind rustling through unseen scrub brush. Suddenly, the screen flickered. Just for a second. The image warped, like a hand had smeared across the lens. When it cleared, there was a faint, shimmering distortion directly outside room 7. Like the air itself was rippling. My heart hammered against my ribs. I told myself it was the old camera, dying a slow death. But then, a faint, almost imperceptible sound filtered through the silence of the office, a low, mournful humming. It wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside the motel. From somewhere beyond the lobby. I tried to dismiss it, but the hum grew, a slow, building crescendo, not musical, but resonant, chilling. It felt like it was vibrating in my teeth. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam a thin reassurance. "Hello?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the hum. "Is anyone there?" No answer. The hum intensified, pulsating now, like a monstrous heartbeat. It was coming from the hallway that led to the vending machines and the laundry room, a dark, forgotten corridor that guests rarely used. I pushed through the swing door, the hum now deafening. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of dust and something else, something metallic and sweet, like old, dried rust. The fluorescent lights above flickered, casting long, dancing shadows. Then I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, by the laundry room door, stood a figure. Tall, impossibly thin, its form indistinct in the gloom, like it was made of static. It wasn't the old woman. This was something else. It was subtly shifting, its outline blurring, stretching, then contracting, as if it couldn't quite decide what form to take. And the humming was coming from it. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice choked. The humming stopped. The silence that followed was worse. The figure didn't move, but I felt an immense, predatory focus on me. The air grew icy cold, raising goosebumps on my arms. Then, a whisper. Not from the figure, but all around me, in the walls, in the floorboards. He found us. My blood ran cold. The whispers sounded like multiple voices, faint and desperate, overlapping. And they were terrified. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the office. I spun around, my flashlight beam frantic. The figure was gone. I stumbled back into the lobby, my heart hammering. The office door was still closed. Nothing looked disturbed. But then I saw it. On the pristine, polished surface of the front desk, a single, dark smear. Not blood. It looked like ash. The surveillance monitor flickered again, violently this time, then went completely dark. Static fizzed across the screen. My only window to the outside world was gone. And I was alone. Underscore 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 underscore. Panic gnawed at me, cold and sharp. I fumbled for my phone. Dead. No signal. Just like the old woman's words, it knows when it's being watched. I knew then, with a chilling certainty, that this wasn't about an escaped patient or some random transient. This was about the motel itself, and something that lived within its walls. The whispers began again, closer this time, just behind me. Don't look away. I spun around. Nothing. Just the dim light of the lobby. But the air grew thick with something I recognized now, a deep, pervasive sadness, layered with a bone-deep despair. It was the emotional residue of every lost soul, every broken dream, every fleeting agony that had ever passed through the Desert Rose Motel. And it was overwhelming. Then, a sound, distinct and terrifying. From room 7. A slow, rhythmic thump, thump, thump. It wasn't a heartbeat. It was too heavy, too hollow. Like something being dragged. My mind raced. The old woman. Room 7. The whispers. The shifting figure. It all clicked with horrifying clarity. The old woman hadn't booked a room for herself. She had booked it for it. She was its escort. Its gatekeeper. And it wasn't just a monster. It was the manifestation of the motel's sorrow, given grotesque form. The dragging sound grew louder, closer. It was coming down the hallway towards the lobby. The whispering voices now seemed to chant, a frantic, desperate chorus, he comes, to claim his own. I had to move. I had to get out. My eyes darted around, searching for an escape. The back exit, the one to the staff parking. It was my only chance. I bolted, not towards the main entrance, but through the swinging door to the office's back room. The dragging sound behind me intensified, accompanied by a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the floorboards. The back room was dark, filled with forgotten mops and cleaning supplies. I fumbled for the light switch, my hands trembling. The moment the weak bulb flickered on, I saw it. Not the shifting figure. Not directly. Reflected in the dusty mirror hanging on the wall, above a rusty sink, was a fleeting image. A man. Not solid, but made of shadows and swirling dust. His face was a contorted mask of agony and rage, his eyes empty sockets. And around his neck, a thick, coiling rope, disappearing into the ceiling above. He was dragging something. Himself. A hanging man. A ghost. The whispers intensified, overwhelming me. He never left, he never left. He waits for the quiet, he waits for the despair. The figure in the mirror suddenly blurred, stretching towards me, its form elongating, its empty eye sockets fixing on mine. The image in the glass wasn't just a reflection. It was the original. The true horror of the desert rose. The hum returned, deafening now, radiating from the mirror, from the figure, from everywhere. I slammed my eyes shut, pressing my palms against my ears, trying to block out the whispers, the hum, the encroaching despair. But it was inside me now. I felt the cold grip of absolute hopelessness, the crushing weight of a life ended by its own hand. This was what the motel fed on. This was why I clung to this stretch of highway. No! I screamed, a primal sound of defiance that tore through the overwhelming negativity. I opened my eyes. The figure in the mirror was still there, but it flickered, as if my shout had briefly disrupted its hold. My gaze snapped to a small, framed painting on the wall next to the mirror. A faded watercolor of a lone, vibrant red rose. A desert rose. It was absurd, mundane, but as I looked at it, a thought, clear and sharp, cut through the terror. Hope. A symbol of life, resilience, against the desolate despair. It was a desperate, foolish thought, but I clung to it. If this thing fed on despair, perhaps hope was its poison. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, I ripped the painting from the wall. Its frame was light, flimsy. I threw it, not at the mirror, but at the light switch. The bulb shattered with a pop, plunging the room into absolute darkness. The hum cut off instantly. The whispers died. The oppressive cold lifted. Silence. Absolute, terrifying silence. I stood there, gasping, shaking, in the pitch black. My heart still pounded, but it was a living heart. The overwhelming despair began to recede, slowly, leaving a sickening emptiness in its wake. I stumbled out of the back room, through the office, and burst out into the Texas night. The neon sign for the Desert Rose Motel still flickered, casting its sickly pink glow. But now, it seemed to burn with a darker, more malevolent energy. I didn't look back. I ran. I just ran. I never returned to the Desert Rose Motel. I don't know what happened to the old woman or Malik. But I know this, some places aren't just buildings. They're anchors. They're built on the remnants of human pain, and sometimes that pain takes on a life of its own. It waits. It hums. And it always knows when it's being watched. And now, so do I. Every flicker of a light, every faint hum in the quiet night, every unexplained chill, I feel it. Because the desert rose, and whatever haunted it, had left its mark. And some things, once seen, can never truly be unseen. You've journeyed with us through the chilling halls of Blackwood Asylum, where the thin veil between sanity and madness was violently torn. You stepped into the ancient, whispering dread of Dar al-Jumaun, where forgotten horrors stirred beneath Marrakesh's unsuspecting streets. And you faced the lingering despair of the Desert Rose Motel, where pain itself took on a horrifying form. What began as a nightmare for Olivia became a desperate struggle for Amin and a chilling revelation for Matthew. Their stories, though separated by miles and circumstances, share a terrifying truth: some places aren't just bricks and mortar. They're anchors for unspeakable things, built upon the echoes of suffering and the very fabric of fear. These aren't just tales of the supernatural, they're reminders that the monsters don't always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes, they're embedded in the very ground beneath our feet, waiting for the perfect moment to emerge, to feed, and to remind us that some horrors simply can't be locked away. Thanks for watching, and remember, the quiet moments are often the most terrifying.